Hey, what's going on, everyone? Today we've got a massive update to talk about for NHL 26, and I want to break it all down for you in a way that feels like we're just hanging out and talking hockey. This is update 1.1.1, and while the name might sound small, like it's just a little patch, it actually packs in some really important changes across a bunch of different modes: gameplay, Be a Pro, franchise, HUT, and even World of Chel. So let's just roll into it and unpack everything together, because if you've been playing the game since launch, you'll know some of the things that felt a little rough. And this patch is clearly EA Sports taking some of that community feedback seriously and trying to smooth it out. First off, let's talk about gameplay, because that's the core of any NHL game. The first thing they addressed is something that was frustrating players in World of Chel, which was the issue where AFK players weren't being removed from matches. You know that feeling. You queue up with your squad, you're ready for some intense 6v6 action, and then one person on the other team is clearly not even playing. Maybe their controller is down, maybe they just walked away, and it ruins the flow of the match. Before this patch, the system wasn't catching that consistently. Now that's fixed, and AFK players will be dealt with properly, which should make games feel more balanced and fair. It's one of those quality of life things that isn't flashy, but actually changes how smooth your experience is game to game. Moving into Be a Pro, this mode saw big adjustments, and honestly, it needed them. The health system in particular was a point of frustration. Players were noticing that their health would drop quickly, almost unrealistically, from things like blocking shots, getting hit, or even throwing hits. The patch has tuned this system by factoring in time on ice and scaling down those health reductions. That means if you're logging a ton of minutes, you're not going to be unfairly penalized for playing your role. It's more balanced now. And feels closer to what the mode was intended to represent. On top of that, they've reworked the form scoring system. If you've played Be a Pro this year, you know about form. It's that performance tracker that judges how hot or cold your player is. But the issue was that it was a little too low action games. Like, if you were out there playing solid defense, but maybe you didn't rack up goals or assists in a particular game, your form would just tank. Now, they've balanced the values for things like goals, assists, power play points, shorthanded points, body checks, plus minus, giveaways, takeaways, and shots. That means defensive players or those in less flashy roles won't feel punished for not filling up the score sheet every single night. It's a subtle but really important change for immersion. There were also some smaller but meaningful fixes in Be a Pro. For example, the custom option was missing in the play game flow. Now it's back. And while that sounds small, it adds back player choice, which is always good. And then there was this weird issue in the draft interview conversations where the answers you gave didn't actually line up with the impact on brand management or teammates. Imagine answering a question in a way that you thought would boost your management approval, only to find it weirdly hitting your teammate chemistry instead. That's been corrected, so now your choices reflect the actual intended impact. It's one of those immersion fixes that really matters if you're someone who enjoys playing through the career journey and seeing your decisions matter. Now let's head into franchise mode. This one has always been a fan favorite for people who love building dynasties and tinkering with rosters. One of the main fixes here is with line chemistry. Previously, the chemistry system wasn't properly generating from X factors, which are supposed to be a major part of player synergy. That meant some lines just felt flat when they shouldn't have. After this patch, line chemistry is working the way it should, making your roster moves and line decisions more meaningful. They also added coach conversations in the AHL, which is pretty big if you're someone who takes development seriously. Having the ability to interact with coaches down in the minors gives you more control over player growth and organization culture, and it's one of those additions that makes franchise feel deeper. Another important fix here was around a crash that would happen if you earned the quick draw X Factor through a season goal and then tried to go into edit lines. That's the kind of bug that just kills the flow of a franchise save, because crashes at the wrong moment can mean losing progress. The fact that it's fixed is a huge relief for people who play long-term saves. Nobody wants to put 20 seasons into building the perfect dynasty only to lose hours of work to a crash tied to one ability. Hockey Ultimate Team, or AHIT, also saw some fixes. If you've been grinding this mode, you know how important progression and access to all the features is. There was an issue where training camp objectives could block access to the auction house even after you had completed them. That's just unnecessary friction, and thankfully it's gone now. Once you've done your objectives, you'll have access without roadblocks. They also fixed an error message that was popping up during ranked matchmaking, which was another frustration point. Ranked play is competitive and time-sensitive, so not being able to connect cleanly to matches was a pain. That should be resolved now, meaning more time actually playing and less time staring at error screens. And then there's World of Chel, the mode that brings people together in clubs for ESHL games. A crash was happening when navigating from the club members menu in 6v6, and that's been patched out. This one was especially annoying because Chel is such a social mode, and if the menus themselves aren't stable, it makes organizing your team frustrating. That stability fix means you can focus more on the ice and less on fighting the interface. Now, EA didn't just fix things in this update. They also gave us a look at what's coming next. And this is where it gets exciting. They've acknowledged some gameplay elements that are being looked at for future patches. First up is LT behavior, which is vision control. Right now, some players feel like it's either too powerful or not behaving consistently, so adjustments are on the way. Then there are short distance saucer passes. Anyone who's played online knows the frustration of trying to make a crisp little saucer feed only for it to not behave the way you'd expect. That's going to be looked at. Poke checks are also on the radar. Sometimes they're too effective, other times they feel like they don't register at all, so there's tuning plan there as well. And finally, the frequency of shots hitting the post is something the dev team is monitoring. We've all been there, right? You're on a breakaway, you make the perfect move, take the shot, and clang, it's off the post. Once or twice feels realistic, but when it happens too often, it feels scripted. EA has heard that feedback, and it's something they're investigating. So when you look at this patch as a whole, it's not just a band-aid. It's part of a bigger conversation between the community and the developers. They're clearly listening, and that's encouraging, especially this early in the game's life cycle. NHL 26 is trying to strike a balance between realism, fun, and competitive integrity, and patches like this one are steps in that direction. It's not perfect, and there's still plenty that can be refined, but you can see the game slowly taking shape into something that's more polished and tuned to the player base. Now let's zoom out a little and talk about what these changes mean for you if you play certain modes more than others. If you're a pro player, you're probably going to feel the biggest difference immediately. Your health won't be draining unrealistically, and the form system won't punish you as hard for low-event games. That makes careers feel more natural and keeps you engaged longer. Franchise players are going to love the chemistry fix because it makes roster building feel more strategic. And if you're deep into HUT, smoother matchmaking and fewer roadblocks with the auction house mean your grind is going to feel less frustrating. Shell players are going to appreciate that the social side of the game is more stable, and with AFK players being removed, games should flow better overall. What I really like about this update is that it feels practical. Sometimes patches throw in changes that are flashy but don't really solve the things people were complaining about. This one, though, is clearly aimed at fixing problems that players were running into daily. It's not going to completely change how the game feels, but it's definitely going to make it smoother, fairer, and more stable, which is exactly what you want in a patch this early after launch. So, what do I think overall? NHL 26 Update 1.1 is a win. It's not the biggest patch in the world, but it hits the right areas. And more importantly, it shows that EA is listening to us. They could have ignored the AFK issue in Chel. They could have let Be a Pro health stay broken for months. They could have shrugged at franchise chemistry, but they didn't. They tackled those problems right away. That kind of responsiveness is what keeps people invested. Because at the end of the day, hockey games aren't just about what's on the disc at launch. They're about how the game evolves over the season with feedback, fixes, and updates.